The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 7 ancient species sat on the council, each one older than human civilization by millions of years. They had watched galaxies form and die. They had cataloged 10,000 intelligent species across the universe. And when they found a species they did not like, they simply erased it from existence. The council chamber floated in the heart of a massive space station, far from any sun. The room was circular, with 7 tall chairs arranged in a half-moon shape. Holographic displays filled the air, showing star maps and fleet positions. Today, they were looking at a small yellow sun in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. "The species calls itself human," said Councillor Vethin, his gray skin reflecting the blue light of the displays. He was the eldest of the Morthon, a species that had conquered their first world when Earth was still a ball of molten rock. They live on the 3rd planet from their sun. They have existed for approximately 300,000 years. "And their technology?" asked another counselor, a voice like wind through dead leaves. "Primitive," Retham replied. "They have sent a few small vessels to their moon. They have basic nuclear capability. They spend most of their time fighting each other over land, resources, and ideas. They have no unified government. Our initial assessment classifies them as a Category 2 species. No threat to galactic stability." The counselors made sounds of agreement. A Category 2 species was barely worth discussing. Such species were usually left alone until they developed faster-than-light travel. Then they would be given a choice: join the Council's system of governance, or be destroyed. But today's meeting was different. A representative from the Vareth Dominion had requested permission to subjugate Earth. The Vareth were the Council's military arm, a warrior species that had crushed rebellions and conquered planets for 8,000 years. When the Council needed something destroyed, they called the VARETH. Admiral Kethril stood before the Council, his scaled body covered in ceremonial armor. His species had evolved from predators, and even after millennia of civilization, they still looked like monsters from human nightmares. His eyes were yellow and cold, his teeth sharp enough to tear through metal. "The Sol system contains valuable resources," Kethril explained. "The 3rd planet has abundant water, minerals, and biological diversity. More importantly, the asteroid belt contains enough rare metals to fuel our shipyards for centuries. We request permission to subjugate the native species and establish mining operations." "And the humans?" Councillor Vethin asked. "What will become of them?" "Those who surrender will be used as labor. Those who resist will be eliminated. Based on our projections, the subjugation should take no more than 6 planetary rotations. Perhaps less." The Council deliberated for exactly 4 minutes. The decision was unanimous. Earth would fall under Vareth control. The humans, like countless species before them, would learn their place in the galactic order. Admiral Kethril bowed and left the chamber. He had 900 warships waiting for his command. Each ship was larger than anything humans had ever built. Each one carried weapons that could crack continents and boil oceans. The humans had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks later, the skies above Earth changed forever. It was a Tuesday morning in Washington, D.C., when the first ships appeared. They came out of nowhere, massive dark shapes that blocked out the sun. Within an hour, similar ships hung over every major city on the planet. Beijing, Moscow, London, Tokyo, New York, Cairo, Sydney. No place was spared. Lieutenant Jack Morrison was eating breakfast in a military cafeteria when the alarm started. He was 28 years old, a communications officer with the United States Space Command. He had joined the military because he believed humanity's future was in the stars. Now it seemed the stars had come to them. He ran outside with dozens of other soldiers and stared up at the sky. The ship above Washington was at least 5 miles wide. It hung in the air without any visible means of support, a monument to technology that humanity could not even begin to understand. Then the broadcast began. every screen on Earth. Every radio, every phone, every computer displayed the same message. The face of Admiral Catherall appeared, his alien features sending waves of terror through billions of people. "People of Earth," the Admiral said, his voice translated into every human language. "Your planet is now under the control of the Varus Dominion, acting with the full authority of the Galactic Council. You will surrender all weapons. You will surrender all military assets. You will surrender all government authority to our occupation forces. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction. You have 6 hours to comply." The broadcast ended. For a long moment, the world was silent. Jack found himself standing next to General Patricia Holloway, the commander of Space Command. She was 62 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen 3 wars. She had spent her entire career preparing for threats from space. Everyone had told her she was wasting her time. "Ma'am," Jack said quietly, "what do we do?" General Holloway did not answer immediately. She stared up at the alien ship, her face impossible to read. Jack thought he saw fear in her eyes, but also something else. Something harder. Finally, she turned and walked back toward the command center. Jack followed her. Inside, chaos reigned. Officers were shouting into phones. Screens showed news footage of panic in the streets. The president was being evacuated. World leaders were trying to communicate with each other, but no one knew what to say. General Holloway walked to a communications console and picked up a red phone. This was the line that connected directly to every major military commander in the world. American, Russian, Chinese, European. All of them were listening. "This is General Patricia Holloway, United States Space Command," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "I am declaring a global emergency under the United Nations Charter. All military forces are hereby requested to establish joint command. We are no longer Americans or Russians or Chinese. As of this moment, we are humanity. And we are at war." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was iron. "Get me, everyone. Right now." Within 6 hours, the Earth deadline passed. Earth did not surrender. Admiral Catherall, watching from his command ship, gave the order to begin the invasion. He expected the whole thing to be over within a week. He had no idea what he had just started. The Varus had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had defeated species with technology far beyond humanity's simple rockets and nuclear weapons. They had crushed empires that spanned entire star systems. In their entire history, no subjugation campaign had ever failed. Admiral Catherall expected Earth to be the easiest conquest of his career. The first ground forces landed in 12 locations around the world. Each landing zone held 10,000 Varus soldiers, heavily armed and protected by energy shields that could stop any human weapon. Or so they believed. In Kansas, a farming community watched the alien dropships descend into the wheat fields. The ships were the size of football stadiums, black and angular against the blue morning sky. When they landed, the ground shook for miles. Greg Patterson stood on his porch and watched the aliens march out of their ships. He was 54 years old. His family had worked this land for 5 generations. He had fought in 2 wars for his country and had the scars to prove it. His wife Linda stood beside him, holding the hunting rifle that had belonged to his grandfather. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Greg took the rifle from her hands and checked the ammunition. "Same thing my daddy did in Vietnam," he said. "Same thing his daddy did in France. I'm going to fight." That night, a Varus patrol of 20 soldiers marched through the wheat fields. They were looking for human military bases, communication centers, anything that might organize resistance. They found nothing but empty farms and silent roads. They never saw Greg Patterson and his 17 neighbors hiding in the irrigation ditches. The first shot took the patrol leader through the eye. The Varus had shields that could stop laser fire and plasma bursts, but they had never encountered something as primitive as a lead bullet moving at 3,000 feet per second. The shields were not calibrated for such ancient weapons. 12 Varith soldiers died in the first 10 seconds. The rest tried to return fire, but their targets had already vanished into the darkness. The wheat field swallowed the humans like water swallowing stones. By morning, the entire patrol was dead. Their weapons were gone. Their communication devices were destroyed. And written in the dirt beside their bodies was a single word in English: welcome. This scene repeated itself across the world. In Vietnam, farmers who still remembered the American War taught their grandchildren how to build tunnels and set traps. In Afghanistan, men who had fought the Soviets and then the Americans now turned their expertise against a new invader. In Ukraine, soldiers who had been fighting for years simply found a new enemy to kill. The Varith had never seen anything like it. Every species they had conquered before had either surrendered immediately or fought in organized military formations that could be easily destroyed. But humans did not fight like that. They fought from shadows. They attacked and disappeared. They used weapons made from farming equipment and household chemicals. They turned their own cities into death traps, filled with hidden explosives and ambush points. In the first month, the Varith lost 6,000 soldiers to what they began calling ghost attacks. Their advanced sensors could not track enemies who moved through sewers and subway tunnels. Their orbital weapons could not hit targets that hid among civilian populations. Admiral Kethral demanded answers from his intelligence officers. They had none to give. While the guerrilla war raged on the surface, something else was happening in secret. Deep beneath a mountain in Colorado, the world's greatest scientists had gathered. American physicists worked beside Russian engineers. Chinese chemists shared notes with German biologists. Every nation had sent their best minds to a single location with a single mission: find a way to fight back. Dr. Benjamin Cole was 36 years old, a physicist from MIT who specialized in theoretical energy systems. 3 weeks ago, he had been writing academic papers that maybe 100 people would ever read. Now he was leading a team trying to unlock the secrets of alien technology. The shield generators operate on a frequency principle, he explained to his team, pointing at a holographic display. They had recovered this data from a crashed Varith scout ship that had been shot down over Brazil. They create a barrier by vibrating particles at a specific rate. If we can find the counter frequency, we can disrupt the shields. How long will that take? Asked General Holloway, who had traveled to the bunker personally. Months? Maybe years. We're trying to understand technology that's thousands of years ahead of us. You have weeks, Holloway replied. Make it work. They worked around the clock. Scientists slept in their labs, ate at their desks, and pushed themselves beyond all limits. When one team hit a dead end, another picked up the work. There was no competition, no national pride, no academic rivalry. There was only the desperate need to survive. 3 months into the invasion, Dr. Cole's team made their first breakthrough. They discovered that Varith shields had a weakness. The same frequency that powered them could be disrupted by a specific electromagnetic pulse. The pulse would only work for a few seconds, but that was enough. We can punch through, Cole announced to a room full of exhausted scientists and military officers. For about 3 seconds, human weapons can hit them. General Holloway smiled for the first time since the invasion began. 3 seconds is all we need. The news spread through resistance networks around the world. For the first time, humanity had hope. In Kansas, Greg Patterson received the information through a coded radio broadcast. He gathered his neighbors, now a fighting force of over 200 people, and explained the plan. We hit them at dawn, he said. New rules. New game. The next morning, a Varith 4 base in Kansas came under coordinated attack. Homemade M8 devices, built from car batteries and copper wire, disrupted the alien shields for exactly 2.7 seconds. In that window, rocket-propelled grenades and hunting rifles cut through armor that had stopped plasma fire. 43. Vara soldiers died before they understood what was happening. The humans vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Admiral Catherall received the report on his command ship. For the first time in his 200 years of service, his hands trembled. He sent a message to the Galactic Council, requesting reinforcements. The Council's response came back within hours. The Varth Dominion is expected to handle primitive species without assistance. Failure is not acceptable. Catherall put down the message and stared out at the blue planet below. He had thought this would be easy. He had thought these creatures were simple animals. He was beginning to understand how wrong he had been. 6 months after the invasion began, humanity had lost 8 major cities. 40 million people were dead. The great capitals of Earth lay in ruins, their buildings reduced to rubble by orbital bombardment. But the Varth had lost something more important than cities. They had lost control. Their ground forces were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. Their supply lines were constantly under attack. Their soldiers were afraid to leave their bases at night. The species they had dismissed as primitive was bleeding them dry. One ambush at a time dot in the Pacific Ocean. Commander Kate Sullivan sat in the control room of the submarine USS Nevada. She was 41 years old, a career Navy officer who had commanded submarines for 15 years. When the invasion began, she had received one order: disappear. The Nevada was one of 12 American submarines that had gone silent on the first day of the war. They had turned off all communications, dived deep into the ocean, and become ghosts. The Varth had sensors that could track ships in space from light years away, but they had never developed technology to see through Earth's oceans. They had never needed to. No species they had conquered before had thought to hide underwater. Kate studied the holographic display in front of her. It showed a Varith supply convoy approaching from orbit, heading for a landing zone in South America. How many ships? She asked. 6 transports, 2 escorts, her first officer replied. Standard pattern. They'll hit atmosphere in 40 minutes. Kate nodded. The Varth had grown careless. They sent their supplies on the same routes, at the same times, protected by the same weak escorts. They thought nothing on Earth could touch them once they were above the clouds. They were wrong. Surface the boat, Kate ordered. Prepare missile tubes 1 through 8. We hit them the moment they're in range. The Nevada rose from the depths like a monster from ancient legends. Water poured off its black hull as it broke the surface. The missile doors opened. 8 missiles launched in rapid succession, their engines roaring as they climbed toward the sky. Each missile carried a nuclear warhead modified with Dr. Cole's frequency disruptor. They would punch through the alien shields and detonate against the hulls. The Varth escort ships detected the missiles too late. Their shields flickered and died. Nuclear fire consumed them. Kate watched the explosions through the periscope, then gave the order to dive. By the time Varith reinforcements arrived, the Nevada was already gone, hiding in the deep where nothing could find her. Across the world, similar attacks were happening every day. Submarines struck from the oceans. Guerrillas attacked from the mountains. Hidden missile batteries fired from underground bunkers. Humanity had turned their entire planet into a fortress. In the Colorado bunker, Dr. Cole and his team worked on an even bigger project. They were building a ship. The craft was ugly. It looked nothing like the sleek Varith vessels that filled the sky. It was built from human steel and alien components, held together by welding and hope. The engine had been ripped from a crashed Vara shuttle. The weapons were modified nuclear missiles. The shields were a patchwork of human engineering and stolen technology. They called it the Defiance. It will work, Dr. Cole told General Holloway as they stood in the underground hangar. We've tested every system. It can fly. It can fight. Can it win? Holloway asked. Cole was silent for a moment. It can hurt them. Whether that's enough, I don't know. But it's better than waiting here to die. Holloway looked at the ship. It represented everything humanity had learned in 6 months of war. Every captured piece of technology. Every sacrifice made by soldiers who had died buying time. Every night that scientists had worked without sleep. "Build more," she said. "Build as many as you can." Winter came to the northern hemisphere. The Vareth had expected the cold to weaken human resistance. Instead, it made things worse. Human soldiers were adapted to their world's climate. Vareth soldiers, evolved on a tropical planet, froze in their armor. Their vehicles broke down. Their supply lines became even more vulnerable. In December, humanity launched its first major counterattack. 20,000 soldiers, drawn from every nation on Earth, assembled in secret in the Sahara Desert. They were supported by 200 aircraft, 500 tanks, and every missile battery that could be spared. Above them, hidden in clouds, were the first 12 ships built from Dr. Cole's designs. The target was the Vareth Primary Landing Zone, a massive base that covered 50 square miles. It held 300,000 enemy soldiers and served as the main supply depot for the entire invasion force. At dawn, the attack began. The human ships hit first, diving out of the clouds with weapons blazing. Vareth shields flickered and died under the frequency disruptors. Explosions ripped through alien warships that had never expected to face enemies in the sky. Then the ground forces advanced. Greg Patterson was there, leading a company of fighters who had come all the way from Kansas. Kate Sullivan had left her submarine to coordinate naval missile strikes. Scientists from the Colorado bunker directed the MA attacks that kept the Vareth shields down. The battle lasted 9 hours. Human losses were terrible. 8 of the 12 ships were destroyed. Thousands of soldiers died on the desert sand. But when the sun set, the Vareth base was burning. 3 alien cruisers lay in pieces across the desert. 50,000 Vareth soldiers were dead. The rest were retreating, calling desperately for evacuation. Admiral Catherall watched from orbit as his forces fled. He saw human soldiers standing among the wreckage, their primitive flags flying over the ruins of his base. He saw the ships they had built from stolen technology, battered but still fighting. For the first time in his long life, he felt fear. He had come to Earth expecting to conquer animals. Instead, he had awakened something far more dangerous. These creatures learned too fast. They adapted too quickly. They refused to accept defeat. Catherall looked at the reports from the battle. Humans had attacked knowing they would die. They had thrown themselves at superior forces without hesitation. They had fought not because they thought they could win, but because surrender was simply not in their nature. "What are these things?" he whispered to himself. No one answered. But deep in his heart, Admiral Catherall already knew the truth. He had made a terrible mistake. By the second year of the war, humanity had done something that should have been impossible. They had built a fleet. 147 ships rose from hidden shipyards around the world. They came from underwater bases in the Pacific, underground hangars in the Andes, and secret factories beneath the Siberian ice. Each ship was a miracle of desperation, built from captured alien technology and human determination. They were not beautiful ships. Their hulls were rough steel instead of smooth alien metal. Their weapons were bolted on wherever they would fit. Their engines made sounds that no engineer would approve of. But they flew, they fought, and they carried crews who had nothing left to lose. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the first ship ever built, now scarred by a dozen battles. He was 34 years old. Before the war, he had been a commercial airline pilot who dreamed of flying in space. The invasion had granted his wish in the worst possible way. His first officer, Lieutenant Commander Samantha Price, stood beside him. She was 31, a former Air Force pilot whose entire family had died in the bombing of Chicago. She never talked about it. She never needed to. Everyone on the ship had lost someone. "Fleet is in position," Sam reported. 147 ships ready for jump. Daniel looked at the view screen. Earth hung in the darkness behind them, blue and green and white, the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Vareth's ships still orbited the planet, but there were fewer now. The invasion had stalled. The enemy was bleeding, but defense was not enough. As long as the Vareth could retreat to their bases beyond Earth, they could rebuild and return. Humanity needed to take the fight to them. Their target was Proxy Station, a Vareth supply base 4 light-years from Earth. It was heavily defended by 40 warships and thousands of soldiers. Destroying it would cut off the invasion force from reinforcements. It would prove that humanity was no longer prey. "All ships," Daniel said into the fleet communication channel. "This is Captain Hayes. 2 years ago, these creatures came to our home. They burned our cities. They killed our families. They thought we would break." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew. They were tired. They were scared. But not one of them looked away. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we take the war to them. For Earth, for everyone we've lost. Let's show these bastards what humanity can do. The fleet jumped faster than light travel was still strange to human crews. The universe seemed to fold in on itself, colors bending in ways that hurt the eyes. Then, suddenly, they were somewhere else. Proxima Station hung against the stars, a massive structure of metal and light. Around it, 40 Vareth warships moved into defensive positions. They had not expected this. No species they had conquered had ever attacked them in their own territory. "All ships, engage," Daniel ordered. The Battle of Proxima Station began. Human ships were outnumbered and outgunned. Vareth cruisers were 3 times larger than anything humanity had built. Their weapons could cut through steel like paper. Their shields could withstand nuclear explosions, but humans had learned. The fleet split into attack groups, coming at the station from multiple directions. They used hit-and-run tactics, striking weak points and retreating before the enemy could respond. They targeted shield generators and engine systems, crippling ships instead of trying to destroy them outright. The Defiance led the assault on the station itself. Daniel pushed his ship through walls of enemy fire, dodging and weaving while his gunners fired everything they had. "Shields at 40%, Sam reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 7. "Keep going," Daniel replied. "We're almost there." A Vareth cruiser moved to block their path. It was massive, 10 times the size of the Defiance, its weapons charging for a killing blow. "Can we go around?" Daniel asked. "Negative. It's too fast." Daniel made a decision in less than a second. "All hands, prepare for impact. We're going through." The Defiance accelerated to maximum speed and flew straight at the enemy cruiser. At the last moment, Daniel activated the frequency disruptor. The Vareth shields flickered and died. The Defiance slammed into the cruiser's hull. Metal screamed. Systems failed. Half the crew was thrown from their stations. But the human ship punched through the enemy vessel like a bullet through flesh. Emerging from the other side in a shower of debris behind them. The Vareth cruiser exploded. "Damage report," Daniel said, pulling himself back into his chair. "We've lost main weapons. Shields are gone. Engine 2 is offline." Sam was bleeding from a cut on her forehead. "But we're still flying." "Good enough. Continue to target." The Defiance limped toward the station's main shield generator. Other human ships joined them, forming a protective screen. They were taking terrible losses. 12 ships were already destroyed. 20 more were crippled. But they kept coming. "Fire everything," Daniel ordered when they were in range. Missiles and railgun rounds slammed into the station's shield generator. The explosion was visible from orbit around the nearest planet. The station's shields collapsed. "All ships," Daniel broadcast. "The shields are down. Hit them with everything you have." The human fleet unleashed hell. When it was over, Proxima Station was a ruin. 23 Vareth warships had been destroyed. The rest had fled. Humanity had suffered grievous losses. 52 ships were gone. Thousands of people had died, but they had won. Admiral Catherall received the news on his command ship above Earth. He read the report 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. These primitives, these creatures who had barely reached their own moon 2 years ago, had crossed 4 light years of space and destroyed one of the most heavily defended bases in the Dominion. His communication officer approached nervously. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet. Put it through. Captain Hayes appeared on the screen. His face was bruised. His uniform was torn. Behind him, his bridge was filled with smoke and sparks. But he was smiling. Admiral Catherall, Daniel said. This is the human fleet. We just destroyed your station. We killed your ships. And we're coming for you next. He leaned closer to the camera. You should have left Earth alone. The transmission ended. Admiral Catherall sat in silence for a long time. Then he began writing a message to the Galactic Council. For the first time in 8,000 years, the Varus Dominion was requesting permission to retreat. The hunters had become the hunted. 3 years after the first Varus ship appeared above Earth, a human fleet jumped into the home system of the Galactic Council. 200 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel, their weapons charged and their crews ready for battle. They were no longer the ugly patchwork vessels of the early war. These ships were built with purpose, their designs refined through 3 years of constant fighting. They were painted black, with the blue and green symbol of United Earth on their hulls. The Council's home system had never seen a hostile fleet. For 12,000 years, no species had dared to challenge the rulers of the galaxy in their own territory. Defense satellites powered up for the first time in millennia. Ancient warships that had not moved in centuries began activating their systems. But they were too slow, too old, too confident in power that had never been tested. The human fleet did not attack. Instead, they took position in high orbit above the Council's capital world and waited. Their message was clear. We could destroy you, but we choose to talk. The Council had no choice but to listen. Ambassador Ryan Carter walked through the halls of the Council station, flanked by 2 Marine guards. He was 53 years old, a former high school history teacher from Ohio. Before the war, he had spent his days teaching teenagers about ancient civilizations and world conflicts. Now he was about to speak for all of humanity. Behind him walked General Patricia Holloway, her gray hair now completely white, her body carrying the scars of 100 battles. Beside her was Captain Daniel Hayes, who had survived the destruction of 3 ships, only to take command of a 4th, then a 5th. These 3 humans represented everything their species had endured and everything they had become. The council chamber was vast, larger than any building on Earth. The 7 counselors sat in their tall chairs, looking down at the humans like gods examining insects. These beings had ruled the galaxy since before humans had learned to use fire. They had destroyed civilizations on a whim. They had never, in all their history, been afraid. They were afraid now. Ryan stopped in the center of the chamber and looked up at the ancient faces. He took a moment to study each one. The gray-skinned Morthon, who had ordered Earth's subjugation. The insect-like Vreth, who had supplied weapons to the invasion. The ethereal Sylvan, who had watched billions die without lifting a finger to help. He felt no hatred. Hatred was too small an emotion for what had happened. He felt something colder, something more dangerous. You attacked Earth, Ryan said simply. The words hung in the air. The counselors stared at him, frozen, as if they could not believe a human would speak to them this way. For 12,000 years, lesser species had knelt before them, begged for mercy, pleaded for their lives. This human did none of those things. He stood straight and looked them in the eyes. 3 years ago, Ryan continued, you sent the Varus Dominion to conquer our world. You thought we were primitive, weak, just another species to be harvested for resources and labor. He paused, letting the silence stretch. You were wrong. Counselor Vethan leaned forward, his ancient face unreadable. You have fought well, human. We acknowledge this. But you stand in our chamber with 200 ships. We have thousands. Whatever you have accomplished, it ends here. Ryan smiled. It was not a pleasant smile, does it? Check your sensor readings, Counselor. Look at what's happening in the Varth home system. A holographic display flickered to life above the chamber floor. It showed the Varth home world, surrounded by debris that had once been warships. Human vessels moved through the wreckage, hunting down the last survivors. The Varth Dominion, which had conquered 1,000 worlds, was being systematically destroyed. The Varth are finished, Ryan said. Their fleet is gone. Their leadership is dead. Their empire is falling apart as we speak, all because they made the mistake of attacking our home. The counselors exchanged glances. Some of them were beginning to understand. Now let me tell you about humanity, Ryan continued. We are a species born in conflict. We have been fighting each other since we first learned to pick up rocks and throw them. Every generation of our history has known war. Every child grows up learning about the battles their ancestors fought. He began to walk slowly around the chamber, his voice echoing off the ancient walls. We have survived ice ages and plagues. We have survived floods and famines and fire. Every time something tried to destroy us, we adapted. We overcame. We came back stronger. He stopped and faced the council directly. You killed 40 million of our people in the first wave of the invasion. By the end, nearly 1 billion had died. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were reduced to ash. Families were torn apart. Children grew up as orphans. His voice hardened, and it only made us angrier. General Holloway stepped forward. Every species you have conquered before accepted their fate. They saw your technology and your power, and they gave up hope. But humanity does not give up. We do not know how to surrender. You can beat us down, burn our cities, kill our people, and we will get back up. Every single time. Captain Hayes spoke next. I have lost 4 ships in this war. Every time, I watched my crew die around me. Every time, I found another ship and went back to fight. Because that is what humans do. We do not stop. We do not quit. We keep going until we win or until there is no one left. Ryan nodded to both of them, then turned back to the council. You have 2 choices, he said. The first choice is war. You can try to destroy us, the way you have destroyed so many others. But I promise you, it will not be easy. We have learned your technology. We have studied your tactics. We have built a fleet that can challenge anything in this galaxy. And we have something you will never have. What is that? Counselor Vethan asked. The absolute certainty that we will never, ever stop fighting. We will keep coming. Generation after generation. War after war. Until either we win or the last human being draws their final breath. That is not a threat, Counselor. That is simply who we are. The chamber was silent. Your second choice, Ryan continued, is peace. You welcome humanity into this council as equals. We share knowledge, trade, and exploration. We work together to build something better than what existed before. No more subjugation. No more conquest. A new era for all species. He spread his hands. The choice is yours. The council deliberated for less than an hour. When they emerged, Counselor Vethan announced the decision personally. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The Varth Dominion was dissolved. Reparations would be paid. A new charter was being written, one that prohibited the conquest of developing species. As Ryan walked out of the chamber, General Holloway fell into step beside him. Think they'll keep their word? She asked. Ryan looked out at the stars, at the human ships hanging in orbit, at the future that lay before them. I think they finally understand the most important lesson about humanity, General. What's that? Ryan smiled. We don't know how to stay down. The end